Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and hey, you can do this. Oop. Because this is Airwindows HipCrush. Now, you might not understand why I'd want to do this, although we can add other things. But what if I got a little help from some friends and did this? I'm pretty sure I could play this all the way through and not run into a problem. Because this is Airwindows HipCrush, this is the plugin for completely reinventing a sound and rendering it unrecognizable. And when I say unrecognizable, I mean unrecognizable. Like you wouldn't necessarily know what this was when it started. So let me be quick, and I'm going to be quick because I did a really long video demonstrating every aspect of this as much as possible, and then the screen cap failed, so I didn't get anything useful out of it. But I should be able to at least do a sort of speedy version. So what have we got here? This is a guitar, and we're making it do these weird things. How does it start up, though? The plugin starts up like this, where no sound is heard unless you use the dry wet. What do we hear when we do start including stuff? Well, you hear that this control acts like a sort of bandpass filter, similar to the parametric EQ in ConsoleX, because this is designed to do the same job, but for ConsoleH, the one where you get to reinvent everything. You've got your loudness control, you got your frequency control, you've got a crush control. So how does this work? We're hearing it on a guitar, so it's making a consistent sound. Well, if it's all the way off, there's silence for each of these bands, including bands in other frequencies. If you start bringing it in, however, it starts broader and comes up to a reasonably full volume. And then as you keep pushing it, it starts narrowing itself. Listen to this. And broader. So this is for doing something that I learned about from an engineer called Slipperman, where you can reconstruct sounds out of different bands. And if you're reconstructing the sounds out of bands, what's going to happen is you'll be able to hear through that sound more easily. And I can demonstrate that by turning all these up all the way. Full dry is the normal sound, and that blocks other sounds more effectively. But if you go to the very artificial sound of just made out of I can dial that high frequency sound into sort of the chug sound of a guitar. You can get something that sounds kind of like the original sound, but it's not going to get in the way in the mix nearly as much. And that's something that we can do with all of this stuff. You can also do it on other sounds, like, for instance, this electric piano sound. And it's going to make a sound that doesn't interfere with other sounds in the mix as much. But then you can also get funky with our crush controls. And you heard that on the other recording, which will go unnamed. And here's how that works on, for instance, the drum sound. What it's doing is using this crush control to either gate or compress the sound that you're working with. So let's set the mids to full compress. That is a very noisy sound. If you were doing a bit crushy type of thing, you might run with something like this. Maybe rather than tightening it that much, leave it fairly broad range. And that gives you a kind of low bit sampler style sound. But then we can also kind of multiband it. But we get to run the bit crushes separately. The mid doesn't have to be at full crank. It can be left out, or we can dial down the amount of crank this has on it. At the center, it is just pass-through. And we're still doing the really heavy crushing on the hats. Of course, we can make it isolate the hats more. We can have slightly less bit crush on the hat. That's still doing a bit crush, but it's at a different bit depth than the other bands are doing. We can do less bit crush on the low, or bit compress on the low. And we can use this to essentially just play with the frequency. Because each of these bit crushes are in the middle of two different filter bands, making those parametric bands. So you can use them as normal parametric bands, or you can use them as bit crush, or leave them out entirely. And you can use this to do essentially what's going to become a techno rumble. Let's have it a higher frequency techno rumble. These other two bands are off at this stage, although we could put a techno roar. See, if you want only a little bit of roar, but we still want it to be full low bit roar, what we can do is set the frequency to a frequency that is lower, more of a mid-rangey thing going on, and then we start turning it down. It will focus on that frequency less, but it's still going to do the full bit crush. And we can have only the bit techno rumble. And now we have also got a bit crush on this kind of rest of the sound. And then we can reduce the amount of bit crush there. Go to the dry wet and sneak in that techno rumble. To whatever degree you like. and I hit stop, and it's still going crazy, and I'll tell you why. Because the HipCrush is responding to just the raw noise deep inside the plugin. So there you have it. For the actual plugin, this you can consider to be both a toy to play with and a preview for what's going to happen with ConsoleH, the hip-hop console, their reinventing sounds console. Whole purpose of ConsoleH is knowing the hip-hop community does not stand still and goes and invents new things. This is your tool for inventing new things with. I'm hoping to be able to give a tool where you can really do very creative things with it. If, for instance, the roaring high frequencies of the full HipCrush, in the many ways you can use it, become too aggressive and bright, you can run it into cabs too, and soften and darken it so it's like it's going into a speaker cabinet. But this is your thing. This is what's going to be in ConsoleH. In ConsoleH, it will run in front of cabs 2 for high pass and low pass, and the trigger for the dynamics control with a gate of its own will be in front of this, so you can run it to full blazing roar and then use a gate on the original sound to cut that off if you need to. And honestly, I think this is going to really uncork people's ability to invent new sounds. That's the whole idea. And as you saw, I used a very copyright protected band that I will not name that's all over Content ID. I'll be shocked if anything Content ID'd that, because it has been completely and totally reinvented. Like, I could put an Eagles track on this, play it through it with a sufficiently aggressive setting, and nobody would even know what I'd used. So there you have it. Airwindows HipCrush. I'm going to do my level best to do ConsoleH before 2026. And wish me luck. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.